It's time to review Philippians chapter 1.
Woo!
It's only 30 verses, so stop this video right now. Go read Philippians 1, come on back and push play. So chapter 1 begins with Paul under house arrest in Rome when he pens this letter to the Philippians. Verses 1 and 2, he gives a quick greeting to the bishops and the deacons. Here we go. Bishops and deacons are two classes of local leaders in the New Testament church. Bishop is the Old English word for overseer. Cheerio. It's the equivalent of elder that you read about in Timothy and Titus. An elder oversees the spiritual welfare of the church. And a deacon is one who serves the church by ministering to the physical and the material needs of the church. Now in verses 3 to 8, Paul expresses a deep sense of joy. A deep sense of joy that he finds when thinking of the Philippians and all they mutually share in Christ.
Oh, that's great.
This is a book of joy. Paul uses 5 different Greek words to express the word joy. Joy is mentioned at least 15 times in this letter. In fact, joy is mentioned at least twice in each chapter of the book of Philippians. Now notice Paul's phrase, fellowship in the gospel. The Greek word for fellowship means sharing or participation. So what's the fellowship that he's referring to? He's referring to at least 2 things. 1. The wholehearted welcome that he received when he first arrived in Philippi in Acts 16. 2. The continued prayer and financial support that he personally received from this church. Now notice in verse 6 he says these famous words, being confident of this very thing, that he who begun a good work in you will complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. God worked a wonderful transformation in the Philippians' lives when he first saved them. Bam! Paul has no concern that God who began a good work would desert them now. How good to know that God is totally committed to you and to me. He's going to continue his transforming work until it is gloriously completed when Jesus comes. Now in verses 9 to 11, we get a glimpse into Paul's prayer journal as he prays for the Philippians. He records in his prayer that their lives would overflow with love and righteousness. Paul's prayer was for a love that was discerning and knowledgeable. A love that is expressed in a pure and blameless way, and that produces individuals in the church that are marked by individual righteousness. Now in verses 12 to 19, Paul addresses his Roman imprisonment. Apparently there were some there in Philippi that viewed Paul's imprisonment as a setback to the gospel. Paul's imprisonment mobilized the church. Yeah! Paul was an example and demonstrated God's faithfulness to his persecuted children. Verse 15, Paul says, some preach Christ from envy and some from strife. In verse 18, he says, whether in pretense or truth, Christ is preached, and for this I rejoice, yes, I will rejoice. We may emulate Paul's attitude. Even if someone's motive is to embarrass us or show us up, let's rejoice that good is being done. It's God that's going to judge the motive. Now in verses 20 to 26, we learn that Paul had no anxiety over dying, and in fact was convinced that he was going to be released. In verse 21, he says, for me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Paul had made serving Christ the central and driving force of his life. After such a life, death could only mean gain, for rich rewards await. In fact, for Paul, life is summed up in Jesus Christ. Christ is his reason for being. Death would only relieve him of earthly burdens and let him focus totally on glorifying God. You and I don't need to serve Christ in the same way that the Apostle Paul did. We do need to make serving the Lord in our life our own central purpose. In verse 25, he says, being confident of this, I know that I shall remain and continue with you for all your progress and joy in the faith. Many a Christian have come to realize that heaven is the real home and that no real satisfaction can be found in this life. Why doesn't God just take us home when we're all converted? That's a good question. Paul's been shown that he will remain in the body to further help and nurture the Philippians. And that's a good answer. Now in verses 27 to 30, the chapter concludes with Paul stating that whatever happens, he urges the Philippians that their conduct be worthy of the gospel. Do you see that phrase, conduct yourself worthy of the gospel of Jesus Christ? The Greek word means to live as a citizen.
Ooh, I'm dropping knowledge.
The Christian is to fulfill his or her obligations as a member of a community who have responded to the gospel. In other words, live consistently with what you believe. The key to responsibility is to stand firm in one spirit. To be worthy of the gospel, we must function harmoniously in a local community of faith. Ooh, notice the curious words of verse 28, proof of perdition. What does that mean? It means living proof. It's a legal term denoting proof by an analysis of the evidence. Unity, love, and the Christian refusal to be intimidated by external foes was evidence that the salvation that the believers experienced was real and that their enemies were doomed. Steadfastness is a compelling witness to the gospel's trustworthiness. What can we learn from this chapter? Share the gospel and gain a brother and a rich source of joy. That's Philippians chapter 1. I hope you like this video. Hit like, share this video, subscribe, and join me as we continue this flyby journey or flyover journey of the book of Philippians. See you next time for chapter 2.